Okay, so welcome everyone. This is a talk with Deyan and Ivailo from NitroPack, which is a really, really exciting tool that you can use to speed up your websites with WordPress. What we're going to cover today is really this huge update that's coming in May that Google have pre-announced. It's called the Google Core Web Vitals update. It's going to have big implications for ranking. So this is a introduction for beginners around the subject who are worried about their sites are going to be impacted come May. So I've just got a list of questions. We're going to crack into them. So the first question really is, could you guys just give us a beginner's introduction to this Google Core Web Vitals update is and why Google are introducing it? Over to you guys.
Awesome. Thanks, Jamie. Well, Google are introducing an update that in essence focuses on user experience. So the main point here is a better user experience on your website leads to more conversions. Time and time again, different brands have done studies on this, and it has been more or less common knowledge that improving the way your users experience your website is going to have a positive impact on your business. And now this is getting more formalized. Yeah. Google is pushing this with 3 main metrics, and they more or less focus on load time, interactivity, and visual stability. They obviously have technical definitions that they're using for those, and you would see those when you test your website. But these are really the most important things to think about. How does my site load? Is it visually stable? And is it interactive? Because those are the ground foundations for a good user experience.
Cool. So I guess in simple terms, people will look at this update, and I see this a lot on the forums, that people are taking this as just a page speed issue, that the slow websites are going to be affected. That's part of this, is that right?
They are more or less connected, and I'll give you just a brief overview, and I'll let Ivailo elaborate on this because there's obviously a lot more to it. But you can think of your page speed as a combination of different factors. Some are more technical than others, but they all relate to more or less performance, how quickly things get done on your site.
And the easiest way for people to test this is to go to the Google Page Insights tool, where you can punch in your website address and it'll give you a score, and it'll now tell you whether you've passed or fail the Core Web Vitals test. Is that correct? That's right.
So there's a couple of things going on there, but if you go to Page Speed Insights, that's a fantastic place to start. You will see a score that is going to be either red, yellow, or green, which I think is a fantastic move on the side of Google. I think it's a fantastic way to display results, but there's quite a lot going on. It could be really frustrating if you haven't seen this before. So I would take, if I were trying to optimize my site for the first time, I would take things one step at a time. So first I would look at, hey, what's the overall picture that I'm seeing? No panic, even if it's red, there's a lot of things that can be done. Nothing to worry too much about. It may seem overwhelming, but there's quite a few things that can be done. What you'll see there is how the so-called lab data is seen on your website. That's in essence a snapshot of what your site is, how your site is being perceived right now. And then more importantly, with time, there is field data accumulated. So the expectation there is that's going to be representative of how real world users have actually experienced your website. And that's the tricky bit, because that usually takes about a month to update. So it's more or less a trailing metric. This is something that you expect to see an update on with time. So the takeaway here would be, you can focus on how are things going on right now with Page Speed Insights and lab data, and how things have been going over the past month with the field data. But I think Ivailo can elaborate on that as well.
Yeah, so the main goal of the update is so user experience is very important for Google. So what they're pushing is better user experience. So sites that provide better user experience overall will get a boost in their rankings. So the results will be shown higher. How Google are doing this is what Deyan mentioned with the field data. This is collected from the Chrome browser, and it's generally called the Crux data, the Chrome user experience. So this is data that Google collects from the real world usage of your website. So visitors come to your website and some percentage of the visitors send data to Google.
That's really interesting. I didn't know that. And can we track that Crux data somewhere? Is that shown on the page, the Page Insights page somewhere?
Yeah. So when you run a test, you get two results.
Yeah.
So one is called field data. It sits at the top of the PageSpeed Insights result page. And
Yeah.
below that is the lab data. Sites that do not have sufficient traffic, though, do not have field data, because the data, it needs to have enough data points to be able to show it.
So just a couple of questions before we dive a bit more deeply into what you guys, how NitroPack actually works. And we get a lot of feedback from our customers that they see a huge disparity between the mobile results and the desktop results, like massive differences. What's the reason that they're seeing that?
Yeah, so that's absolutely normal. As you know, mobile devices are not as powerful as desktop devices, which is one of the reasons. But the second reason is the mobile connection. So the connection type that you have to the website greatly affects the loading experience.
And can you just explain the difference between Lighthouse and, just for our viewers, and the Page Insights tool?
So the Lighthouse is kind of like the engine. PageSpeed Insights is just the website that you go to, you run a test, and in the background it runs Lighthouse test.
So can you just tell me a bit about NitroPack and how it helps this process, in terms of if somebody sees their site is all red and they're panicking about what's happening in May? And I should say I put NitroPack on my website, and I'm getting scores of 100, which is shockingly fast. So yeah, just can you give us the main bits that NitroPack does?
So looking at a broad perspective, NitroPack was designed to effortlessly allow you to optimize your site speed. We believe that site speed shouldn't be hard to get, but it is so right now.
Yeah.
There's quite a lot of work being done on, and has been on NitroPack. The core engineering team started working on this problem back in 2012. So there's quite a lot of know-how and experience gathered on this, which allowed us to build a service that gives you access to a super wide range of optimization techniques that work super well in unison, things that no other solution out there will be able to provide you. And it sort of works as, you can think of it as someone who works for your website optimizing it 24/7, but it's an automated piece of software that does that.
Just in terms of because in terms of the experience that you have, if you're using NitroPack, you basically install a connector plugin, and then that connects to a NitroPack service somewhere, and then some magic happens. So can you just explain that bit for people and for me, how that works?
Yep, I assume that you're familiar with typical solutions for optimizing websites, and you know how some of the core strategies are to optimize your images, lazy load the images, minify CSS, JavaScript, HTML, these kind of optimizations.
So you're talking about caching plugins and things like that, I guess.
Yeah. Yep. HTML caching. These are core techniques that all plugins do, and NitroPack is no exception. We do all of this in NitroPack, but we have taken things a step further in terms of how we have implemented these features. So, for example, NitroPack does the image optimization by default. So all images are optimized, and not only optimized, but they're also lazy loaded.
So yeah, that's really great. I mean, I noticed that when I tried to save one of my images from my site, and it's suddenly in a different file format. So how does that actually work? What happens?
Yeah. So NitroPack scans your website.
Yeah.
And we look for assets in the website. So if you have images, if you have CSS files, JavaScript files, we look for those types of files. And then for everything that we can optimize, we basically make a copy, optimize it, and we serve it through our CDN in an optimized version. So for images, we optimize the images, but we also convert to WebP. So browsers that support the WebP format will receive even more optimized images.
And sorry to stop you. Can you just explain to everyone briefly what a CDN is? Because a lot of people will have heard it, but won't actually know what it is.
Yep. So a CDN is short of Content Delivery Network, which is basically a network of servers placed in strategic places around the globe. And the goal is to always have a server that is close to your visitors. So let's say you host your website in the UK, for example.
Yeah.
But you get a visit from the US. So instead of the visitor from US having to transfer all of the files across the ocean, and which is slow, when you have a CDN, you will have servers in the US close to the visitor, and they will download the assets from there, which is much faster.
Got it.
In essence, this is what CDN does, and it's also one of the very important parts of optimizing your website, because you want to be able to serve your site as fast as possible to your visitors. So NitroPack by default includes the CDN. This is something that no other solution provides, but the CDN is core part of NitroPack. It actually cannot function without it. We've built it in a way that you always have a CDN.
And what happens to like I'm hosting my site with WP Engine, who also use a CDN. What happens if there's you guys and also your hosting company using CDNs? What's the deal there?
Great question. What happens is your site runs normally. If you visit your site, it runs through the pre-configured CDN. So if that is from WP Engine, you will use that. But that will only be for pages that are not optimized by NitroPack. Once a page gets optimized, the assets will be transferred. I mean, the physical files are not transferred, but the links to these assets are now pointing to NitroPack's CDN. So only the optimized pages will use our CDN, and all pages that are not yet optimized will use the existing CDN solution. So both can coexist. They do not interfere. It's perfectly fine.
And I know we use a lot of videos on our site with YouTube and Vimeo. And I noticed those are optimized as well, I think. Is that right?
Those would be lazy loaded, yes.
Yeah. But it looks like the player is only called once somebody actually clicks on the video. Is that right? So it's not calling the resource before anyone actually clicks on the video.
Correct. Yes.
Which is really complex to do if you're not using NitroPack. I think that's really quite a complex thing to try and achieve, because video has
but it's very important, because if you're not going to watch the video, why load resources?
Yeah, no, it's huge. It's huge for us. So that was one of my gold stars for you guys, that it solved that problem really quickly. Brilliant. I've been following you guys for probably 6 weeks and using NitroPack on my site and a few other sites actually, and I've seen enormous page speed improvements. And I did see, in fact, I shared with you guys some chatter that I've seen on forums around, is NitroPack for real, and are they cheating the Google page speed scores? Without getting too technical, is there an easy way to answer some of those criticisms or explain them without getting too technical?
I'll try to give you the most important bit about it, and then Ivo can fantastically elaborate on that. The way you can think about it is the web more or less works in a fashion where you can think of it as when you go to a supermarket and there's only one checkout, all the folks have to line up in a long queue, things get really bogged down, and they have to happen one person at a time. So I would make that analogy with a lot of how things are being processed with the web. And one of the key things there is NitroPack allows, in essence, more than one checkout to be open. And then the traffic will be flowing a lot faster through it. This being a different approach may seem to regular tools to be something that they wouldn't detect. So if you're used to looking only for one checkout, you wouldn't even think, hey, there might be more than one checkout that I should look out for.
Yeah.
And that would be a new thing to think about.
Yeah.
Yep.
And what's the technical
So-
answer? What's the technical answer? Thank you. That was great, by the way. What's the technical answer?
So, like I mentioned earlier, one of the main reasons is that NitroPack is able to do even the basic and the standard optimizations to in a much better way than other solutions. So if you take lazy loading, for example, NitroPack lazy loads every image on the web page. So that means the images that are using the picture or the image tag in the HTML, but that also means background images, which are, for example, typically in style attributes. But this is something that other tools can also do, but they need you to manually configure that. With NitroPack, this is automated. But we also lazy load every image that is defined in a CSS file, which no other tool does as of right now. So just looking at the image optimization alone, we are able to save so much space, so much data being transferred just by lazy loading the more images than other tools. What Deyan also said is referring to how we try to optimize the use of the multi-core nature of modern CPUs. So the web is typically single-threaded. So that's why the main thread is so important, and that's why optimizations and speed measuring tools, they measure what happens on the main thread because it's the most important thread and typically the only thread that you can use for a web application, for a website. But modern CPUs have multiple threads and multiple cores, which can process data and information in parallel. So you can process more and you can do more without affecting the main thread, without blocking it. And that's what NitroPack is trying to do. We are trying to utilize these cores and trying to basically change how things typically load in a web page so it can be faster. Like Deyan said, with the checkout analogy, by utilizing the more of one cores in the CPU is basically like having more than one checkout. You can process multiple streams of data at once. That's why we also have a CDN. It helps in improving the site speed. Even if you have a faster server, it's a common misconception that fast server is enough to have a good experience, but it's not. A fast server is something that helps you just have a better first byte and better, faster loading of the HTML. But then when the device has to render the site, even if you deliver the HTML to the client very fast by upgrading your server, if your HTML is not optimized, if your site's structure is not well built, the site will still load slow. So these are all things that NitroPack takes in consideration, and we think about them and we try to optimize the entire journey. Serving the HTML file is just the beginning of what NitroPack does. And in essence, it's the end of what the server does. So if you do server optimization, there's very, very little kind of overlap between what NitroPack does and what server optimization does.
I have one final question, which I'm not sure how I'm going to phrase it. But so again, looking on some of the forums and some of the sort of chat around this, there seems to be some purists is probably too strong a word, but people that are very much, you shouldn't need a caching solution if your sites are built properly. But a lot of WordPress users can never get to that sort of level, or they're using plugins or page builders or shared hosting that can't possibly, they're not going to be able to speed up their sites in quick time. I guess my question, let's get to my question. My question is, do you think somebody should go through that process of optimizing their site in terms of looking at their code base and the theme they're using and the plugins they're using in addition to NitroPack, or do you think they don't need to do that given they have NitroPack and they're seeing amazing scores anyway?
That's a very good question. I wouldn't say it's an either or type of thing. The way I'll start thinking about, hey, how do I best make use of my time? Because as a business owner and someone who's founded different companies before, I want to spend my time doing what I'm best at and how I provide value. And it may be the case, and it very often is the case with our customers, that site speed is something that they need to sort of deal with, but they don't necessarily have the expertise to deal with that. And it can be quite a daunting, complicated thing to do. It can be quite technical.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's reasonable to expect from site owners to become web performance masters in a couple of weeks. I don't think that's a reasonable thing to expect from folks. And this is the sort of design intent behind NitroPack. We think that you can get enormous benefit from getting an automated solution that utilizes years of expertise built in. And most importantly, you can try it out very quickly. There's a free plan that you can go and just test any time of the day, no credit card required. And you can see results immediately. Whereas it might make sense in the long term to consider, hey, the building blocks of what I'm using here, do they make sense? Is it something that I can use 10 years from now? But this is a sort of completely different ballpark, completely different game. My thinking would be, you know what? There's something that I'm really good at that provides value. One of my favorite examples is favorite customer of mine who sells carpets out of Cyprus.
Mm-hmm.
And he needs to focus on selling those carpets. They cost 5,000 euros a pop, fantastic carpets. He needs to focus his time on talking to his customers and not sweating over, hey, what's my FID today? And how do I change my JavaScript so that I can make it better? It may be the case that this is something that's worthwhile looking into, but we would like to give you the opportunity to be able to benefit from performance now and try it out now. And then you could be improving things in the long run that make more sense. Experience shows that that's not easy to achieve, that's not trivial to achieve. And more often than not, it doesn't really make so much sense.
Well, thank you guys. It's been really, 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 really helpful for explaining NitroPack and also Google Core Web Vitals. So that's been brilliant to talk to you both. Thank you very, very much. It's been great. Cheers.
Thank you, Jamie.
Pleasure, James.
It's great.